thank you for, taking time out of your Monday to speak things, all things Madres. I guess we should, start at the beginning. And if you could just sort of explain a little bit about your character Diana and where she is when we first meet her.
Okay, yeah. Well, Diana is a first-time mom. She's pregnant. She is Mexican-American, married to a Mexican man, which I think kind of creates this interesting dynamic just between first-generation Latinos and immigrants who come to this country. And Diana's experience is both the transition between motherhood, between her identity. And there's just this kind of like overreaching, like heroic transition between fearing, institutionalized racism. Even like traditions that she's not accustomed to facing them head on and really having to rise up to the occasion.
I mean, when you got that script, what was it about Diana that really spoke to you and made you decide that, you really wanted to have a go at portraying this, really complex character?
I mean, when I first saw the script, when I first read it, I remember just thinking, this is like a Mexican Get Out, because it felt like it had some elements of horror, but they were also very grounded, which is kind of scary in itself. And I myself am a second generation Latina. So there's just this constant, I think, struggle between like preserving traditions and assimilation. And where we meet Diana, especially at the beginning, is how I feel when I was like, when I was a teenager, when I was growing up and like trying to really understand like where I fit in. And I think that was probably one of like the biggest connections that I had to the character. I also just think like motherhood, although I don't know if I want to be a mom, I think it's just such a beautiful and like daunting and kind of like under-respected, depending on who you talk to, experience. And so when I saw the script, I myself don't have kids, so I wanted to make sure that I did it justice, but I was up for the challenge because I think that is something that needs to be shared. It's something that like women, we just kind of like carry the weight without wanting to really like vocalize how difficult it is. And then just add to that the layer of all these like horrific things happening to Diana during her time in this like small town. So yeah, I guess the identity crisis is something that fascinated me about Diana, and then having the opportunity to like really showcase like how motherhood is kind of just like the leader for all the choices that you make.
Yeah. And obviously, so you're playing this, you're playing a pregnant woman. I'm guessing that involves some sort of, some bump, how as an actor do you sort of, get around that? Because obviously as a pregnant woman, you have to move in a certain way, and did the bump help?
So this is my second time playing a pregnant mom. So when I went on set, it wasn't like the first time that I had to wear a prosthetic. It was interesting because, in this other project, I had like a very weighted prosthetic. And in this one, it was a little bit lighter. And there were some scenes that we did where it was just like a stuffed kind of like onesie. And yeah, I mean, having the weight helps a lot. So I think for me, just like physically, I remember trying to like hold on to how it feels, like as far as your back and like your legs and the way that you walk. I also talked to several friends of mine who were first-time mothers, who had just had babies or who were pregnant. And yeah, I mean, I basically like asked them like what do you do? How do you walk? And so like, it's interesting that like the physicality kind of does help a lot with the emotion and just how you see things, how you perceive things, just because it's all embodied. It's all one thing. So I think I started really with just like the physicality, and then that kind of lends itself into really embodying like what it's like to be a mom. But truly, I can't even, I mean, I watched a ton of videos, but like my best day at work is probably like a first time mom's like easiest day, you know? So yeah.
And Madres it's set in the 70s. And the style sort of, you know, replicates the films that came out in that era. So there was a lot of long continuous shots. You know, as an actor, is it easier for you to sort of be able to stay in the character for those longer periods?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a theater actor. I've done primarily TV and film, but I love long scenes. Like as an actor, I feel like it helps with keeping the same momentum and intensity, or whatever emotion that you're trying to kind of portray. I feel like whenever you have the opportunity, which is rare in TV and film, to have a drawn out scene, yeah, that's like an actor's paradise. You get to just like play around, and you do feel like you're kind of on stage for those, you know, 5 to 10 minutes that you're just running through an entire scene. Yeah, I loved it.
And as much as this film is, you know, it's got its horror elements and it's this piece of fiction, it is actually inspired by and grounded by, you know, some really horrific events. And I think, you know, for me, it was that aspect of the film that was, you know, that was where the real horror was. You know, you're hoping that, you know, this film will get that message out there and make people sort of, you know, realize, you know, how, you know, women still don't have control of their bodies, and, you know, that this is still happening.
Girl, I live in Texas. Like September 2nd, we had a bill that came into place where women were no longer allowed to have abortions after, I believe it's 6 weeks. My sister is recently pregnant, and she didn't know until like the 5th week. So yeah, just like the injustice and like the audacity for other people, especially men, to like still exercise this unwarranted right on women's bodies is just like wild. I can't even imagine what it was like in the 60s and the 70s. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of also what interested me the most about this horror, is that you don't have to think too far away from like reality. That's what's super scary. You know, it's kind of like Handmaid's Tale, Get Out. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, and unfortunately, like as women, we're so lucky to be alive during this time, because it's the best time to be a woman. But there's just so much more work when you consider the fact that, you know, even while we were shooting, there was a case of a whistleblower in Georgia who had you know, let people know that there was non-consensual sterilization in detention centers. And yeah, I mean, it's super difficult and like heartbreaking. And that's why it's important to vote and stay involved in your local communities. You know, watching a movie is like, and representation and like being part of these projects is like the very first step just to get the conversation started. But I also think it's super important beyond that to like make sure that people realize I actively have to participate in women's rights, and just ensuring like equality for all people.
Well, here's hoping that the film sort of helps get that message out there. Wish you guys the best of it with it.
Thank you.